Emotions are powerful signals from our mind and body, often arriving suddenly and with a force that can feel overwhelming. In this introduction, we'll define what we mean by intense emotions, those strong feelings: anger, panic, grief, shame, euphoria, that ripple through your thoughts, body, and behavior, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for days. They're not just big feelings. Intense emotions involve heightened physiological arousal, racing heart, shallow breathing, muscle tension, and priority processing in the brain, which means they can hijack attention and decision-making. Recognizing them as a biological and psychological response helps remove blame and opens the door to practical management. Understanding why intense emotions matter is crucial. First, they shape our decisions. In the middle of fury or fear, choices made can have lasting consequences on relationships, work, and health. Second, unregulated intensity contributes to mental health problems. Chronic anxiety, depression, or substance misuse often tie back to difficulty tolerating strong feelings. Third, intense emotions signal unmet needs or values. They point to what we care about. So when we learn to listen rather than react, we gain important self-knowledge. Consider specific examples. A manager who feels intense frustration during a meeting might snap at a coworker, damaging trust and creating a hostile work climate. Learning to notice the escalation, breath quickening, clenching jaw, and pausing can prevent harm and preserve relationships. Another example: someone experiencing sudden grief after a breakup may feel physical pain and despair. Recognizing grief as a natural response and using grounding techniques, seeking social support, or scheduling time to process can reduce suffering and promote healing. Experts in psychology emphasize that emotion regulation is a skill, not a fixed trait. Therapies like dialectical behavior therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy teach concrete strategies: mindfulness, cognitive reappraisal, distress tolerance, showing that people can become better at managing intensity. Still, challenges and alternative viewpoints exist. Some argue that dampening emotions risks emotional numbness, or that labeling emotions could over-intellectualize experience. That's why the goal is not to eliminate feelings, but to be with them skillfully, acknowledging bodily sensations while choosing values-driven actions. This introduction connects directly to practical approaches we'll cover next: how to identify triggers, short-term calming techniques, longer-term emotion skills, and when to seek professional help, because understanding intensity is the first step toward responding rather than reacting. Recognizing triggers and early warning signs means learning to spot the first sparks before intense emotions become a wildfire. A trigger is anything: a situation, a word, a memory, a body sensation that reliably starts an emotional reaction. Early warning signs are the subtle signals that your mind and body send first: a tightness in your chest, a racing thought, a change in posture, or an impulse to withdraw or lash out. Defining these clearly is the first practical step toward gaining control rather than being controlled. Why this matters: when you can identify triggers and early signs, you create a gap between feeling and action. That gap is where choice lives. Without it, intense emotions often lead to impulsive responses that damage relationships, work, or self-esteem. With it, you can use brief calming strategies, reframe the situation, or choose a healthier response. Recognizing triggers also helps prevent escalation. Interventions at the early warning stage require less energy and are more likely to succeed than crisis management later on. Concrete examples make this real. Example 1. Someone learns that hearing a particular sarcastic tone from their partner triggers anger, because it echoes childhood criticism. Early signs for them might be clenched jaw and faster breathing. Noticing those two things can prompt a pause, a breath, or "I need a moment" before words are exchanged. Example 2. A manager notices that tight deadlines trigger anxiety and perfectionism, with early signs of procrastination and increased caffeine use. Spotting that pattern lets them break tasks into smaller steps or negotiate timelines before stress mounts. Supporting opinions from therapists and neuroscientists reinforce this approach. Clinicians often teach mindfulness and body awareness because the body warns us first. Neuroscience shows the amygdala reacts fast, but the prefrontal cortex can intervene if given even a few seconds. That research supports practical steps like labeling the emotion, grounding in the senses, or stepping away briefly. Challenges include hidden or complex triggers. Trauma-related reactions can appear suddenly without obvious cause, and the discomfort of facing painful patterns. Some may resist noticing because it feels like admitting weakness. Alternative viewpoints caution against over-monitoring every sensation. The goal is awareness, not hypervigilance. Recognizing triggers connects directly to coping strategies, communication skills, and long-term emotional regulation. It lays the groundwork for techniques that follow: breathing, cognitive reframing, boundary setting, and seeking support. In short, spotting the early sparks gives you the power to choose how the story continues. When we talk about the science behind strong emotions, we're describing a coordinated dance between the body and the mind. Physiology refers to what the body does. Hormones rush, the heart rate changes, muscles tense, the breath alters. Psychology refers to what the mind does. We interpret events, attach meaning, recall related memories, and generate inner narratives. Together, these systems create the intensity we experience as anger, fear, grief, or joy. On the physiological side, the amygdala, part of the brain's emotional center, detects potential threats or rewards and can trigger the sympathetic nervous system. That response releases adrenaline and cortisol, increasing heart rate, sharpening senses, and priming muscles for action. The vagus nerve and parasympathetic system later help calm the body, slowing the heart and restoring balance. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin shift mood and motivation. This chain explains why emotions feel visceral. They are literally bodily events, not just mental states. Psychologically, appraisal theory helps us understand intensity. We don't just react to facts, we evaluate them. Two people can face the same event and experience very different emotional magnitudes because their interpretations differ. Past experiences, beliefs, and expectations shape those appraisals. For example, someone who grew up with unpredictable caregivers may experience abandonment cues as intensely threatening, while another person may shrug them off. Real-world examples make this concrete. First, a public speaker's sudden panic. Physiologically, adrenaline spikes, palms sweat, voice tightens. Psychologically, catastrophic thoughts, "I'll fail," amplify the reaction. Techniques that target body and mind together, like paced breathing and cognitive reframing, reduce intensity. Second, grief after a loss involves prolonged cortisol elevation and intrusive memories. Rituals, social support, and meaning-making help both the body settle and the mind process the loss. Experts emphasize that understanding both domains matters for effective strategies. Trauma therapists, for instance, integrate somatic approaches with cognitive therapy. But there are challenges and alternative perspectives. Some argue that labeling emotions too clinically can distance people from their felt experience, while others warn against oversimplifying complex neurobiology into one-size-fits-all fixes. Connecting this to coping with intense emotions, recognizing the dual nature, physiological arousal plus psychological appraisal, lets you choose tools that work. You can soothe the body with breathing or movement, and you can soothe the mind by questioning thoughts and seeking perspective. Both paths together reduce intensity more reliably than relying on only one. When intense emotions hit, the first priority is safety, keeping your body and mind steady enough to make clear decisions. Immediate grounding and safety strategies are practical, short-term actions you can use in the moment to reduce physiological arousal and regain a sense of control. Grounding means anchoring attention in the present so you don't get swept away by catastrophic thoughts or impulsive actions. Safety strategies are the behaviors that prevent harm, slowing your breath, creating distance from triggers, or reaching out for help. Both are crucial first steps before deeper processing or problem solving. Why this matters. Intense emotions hijack thinking and increase risk of saying things you'll regret, of harming yourself, or of making impulsive choices. Grounding interrupts that cycle. It restores autonomic balance, reduces adrenaline and cortisol, and gives you a window to choose deliberate responses instead of reflexes. In short-term crisis management, these tools can be life-saving. They're also the foundation for longer-term emotion regulation skills like cognitive reframing or therapy work. Two concrete grounding techniques are 5-4-3-2-1 sensory anchoring and paced breathing. For 5-4-3-2-1, name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. This shifts focus from distressing thoughts to immediate sensory data. Paced breathing means inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, and exhaling for 6. This lengthens exhalation to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and ease panic. Another practical safety strategy is creating physical space. Step outside, sit down, lock a door, or move to a public area. Changing your environment often interrupts escalation. If self-harm is a concern, prepare a safety plan. Remove means, identify a crisis contact, and list emergency numbers. Experts in mental health endorse these approaches as evidence-based first-line interventions for panic and emotional dysregulation. However, challenges exist. Grounding can feel ineffective when emotions are overwhelming, and some people may find sensory techniques triggering rather than soothing. Cultural and individual differences affect which strategies feel safe or acceptable. If grounding repeatedly fails, it's essential to seek professional support or crisis services. These immediate tactics connect directly to broader emotion regulation. They create the calm needed for reflection, therapy work, or problem solving. Think of grounding and safety as the emergency brakes that let you stop without skidding. Use them first, then choose what comes next.